Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be using Data-Led Doctor to create some specifications for an order confirmation page so that we can track transactions coming through our website. Now, unlike most of my other videos, I'm not going to be using enhanced e-commerce. I'm going to assume that you're using another system. And in this case, I've chosen Qubit. So Qubit is, they have a tag manager and they also have a kind of personalization product, but they also have a set of specifications for a data layer. So I'm going to be using these because I know that their system picks this up automatically, but I quite like their format of their data layer anyway. So it will serve you very well if you're perhaps don't want to use enhanced e-commerce or you want a more robust data layer for other tools. So to get started, I'm going to create a new project. And today we're just going to be doing the order confirmation page, but I'm going to call this Qubit anyway. And I'm going to choose a basic site. And Qubit use the value universal variable for their specifications. Okay, you can see that there. So continue. I don't want any of this stuff. I'm going to turn it all off, which will give me a blank project to begin with. Okay, so we've got a blank project. Obviously the documentation is blank because we have no placements, but I'm going to create a placement to represent my order confirmation page. This is going to be my order confirmation. And for the moment, I'm going to leave this blank because before I start adding variables, we've got a lot of system-defined variables here, but none of them are the really ones that I want for my transaction because a lot of these are based on Google's enhanced e-commerce variables. So we're going to create some variables that we can use for Qubit. So I'm going to save that and then head over to the variables tab. And I'm going to look at these specifications. So the first thing we have is a transaction. Okay, so we have a transaction object. And within that transaction object, we have a few various things, but the main ones we really need are order ID, and total are probably the two. And currency actually is mandatory here, and these are all optional. The specifications aren't exactly clear because this one, for example, payment type doesn't have mandatory or optional, but we'll assume it's optional. So really what we need, and of course transaction ID should be mandatory, but it isn't. So I'm going to create all of these now. So the first thing we need is the top level transaction object. So I'm going to create that transaction. This is the nice name which we're going to see, but and it's an object, but within the actual code we want it to appear as transaction. So you can see here transaction and then the curly braces representing an object, which you can see here as well. So we're on the right lines. We're going to save that. And next up we need an order ID and currency. So let's create order ID. And we're going to call this is just going to be a string order ID, and in their sample they've got this value, so I'm going to use that so it's consistent, so you can just see what it's going to be look like right there. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to do a couple more. We've got currency, and this is a string, of course, currency, British pounds. Okay, so we've got our 3 there, and finally the other required one was total. So let's create that as well, total. Now, here's a good one to check. So you can see total, because it's not enclosed in quotes, it means it needs to be a excuse me, it needs to be a number value, not a string value. So when I create this variable, I'm going to choose number rather than string, and it's going to be total. And what value have they got? Just so we're clear, they've got £130, so we'll use that as well. And you can see here, because we've selected number, there are no quotes. If I change this to string, you'll see it puts quotes around it, which is not what we want. That wouldn't work. What we want is it without quotes. Okay, so I'm going to leave out the rest of these variables for the moment. You get the picture, you could add them. And again, not all of these are required. I've just implemented the ones that I think are required based on these specifications. Actually, line items is also required, so let's create that one as well. Line items. Now, select the type. This is a difficult one because you can see it's got these square brackets, and the square brackets mean it is an array. And in data layer Doctor, you've got two types of array. You can do an array of objects or just a standard array. Now, this is in fact an array of objects because each one of these line items is an object of in itself, which has multiple variables. So I'm going to select array of objects, and I'm going to put line items. Going to make this look a bit neater. Line items like that. And you can see we've now got an array with different items in it. So let's save that. Okay, so let's pause there. We've got our variables. I'm going to head back to my placement, and now is the time where we're going to start creating this structure. So the top level, we've got transaction, but I'm just going to add all of the variables which I just defined. They're all at the bottom here under the user defined variables. You can't see this because it's off my screen, but trust me, they are at the bottom here. All I'm doing is going right down to the bottom of the list and selecting the values. Okay, you can see we've got them all here. Now the problem is this does not look like what we want because everything is at different levels. Everything, all the variables we've defined, currency, line items, order ID, total, and transaction, are at the root. They're at the highest level they can be. But if you look at the specifications, they're actually all within this transaction object. So that's what we need to do. We now need to assign these all to the transaction object. And as I do this, you'll see that they're all put within the transaction object there. So they're now all within there. Perfect. So let's save that. So we're on the way. We've got this working pretty well, but line items is still just an empty object. So we need to work out what we need to put in there, because this is telling us how much someone bought, what the currency was, what the order ID was. Great. But now we want to know what actual products they bought. So line items, as you can see, needs to be an array of objects. So I'm going to go to the line item specification. If it loads. Okay, a bit of a bug on the website there. Qubit, sorted it out. All right, so again, it's a very similar story here. Within the line item, we've got a product object, and we've got various other things. So I'm going to have to create those again. So I'm going to go back to the variables. I'm going to create a product object. I think there's actually one of these already defined as a standard variable, but I'm going to create it nonetheless. There we go, got our product, so that's that one. Again, to save time, I'm just going to do quantity and subtotal. So we're going to add in a quantity, which should be a number. Ooh, can't call it that. Quantity of 1, and subtotal. Let's add that one in as well. This is again going to be a number, and the value here is 25 UK pounds. Nice to see another UK company, UK tech company. All right, so we've added those, and then you'll also notice within the product object, we've got some more things, right? We've got URL, name, unit price, currency, so I have to again go and add all those. So URL. Now I'm going to call this product URL, but in the actual data layer it's going to be called URL, and we'll give that a value like so. That. You're getting the idea, right? And name. Now product name, I know there's already one down here, and it's got the same thing, so we don't need to create that. That's already there. Let's create unit price though, because that's quite an important one. Unit price, in it goes. Again, it's going to be a number. Unit price, and what did they put? They put 30 quid. All right, expensive. There we go. So let's head over back to the placements. And now, within our line items, we can start building our line item. So if you remember, we've got products. So let's add in the product. We've got the product object. There it is. We've also got the quantity. Add that, and we've got subtotal. And remember to also make sure they go within the product object. Oh, sorry, within the line item object even. These should be all line item things, and the product should go within the line items as well. So now you can see we've got line items there, and within that we've got a product object and quantity and subtotal, which is what we wanted. Now we've just got to put all the things within the product object. So we've got the URL, product URL, we've got unit price, and the final one was, what was it? Product name. There it is. Now, what surprised me, they don't have product ID in here, but so I'm going to add that. That's a bit weird. So there it is, and of course, make sure again that these all go within the right parent. All right, so let's have a look at that. So we've got our transaction object. We then got currency. We've got our line items and a product within that. So we know that this particular product, this particular line item was this product. They ordered one of them, and the subtotal was that. And you've got the order ID. Now, obviously, these values are fake. These are dummy values, which is why the order total doesn't add up to this. But when your developers implement this code, they would ensure that they populate as many line items as were in the basket when someone buys, and that would go through. So save that, and that is it. We now have our documentation for Qubit's universal variable for a sales confirmation page. We now get our developers to put that on the page, and we're ready to go. So if you want to send these again to your developers, you can either use the built-in link, and this is useful because if you ever change the specifications, this will update and you won't have to send the developers more emails. But you can also export this as a markdown file if you just download this. Markdown is a kind of scripting language, and you can just open it in a markdown editor, and that'll make it nice and tidy, but you'll be able to just copy, or you can just directly copy the script out and send it to them, either way. So there it is. There's the sales confirmation page using Qubit's universal variable specification.